Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 454. The Square Circle. Part 1. While driving down the dimensional passageway, neither Han Suyong nor Yu Sang-ah said much. Thanks to that, though, I was able to organize my thoughts while gazing outside the window, on what I need to do in the future, and the things I'd like to do. Next to me, Uriel finally stopped muttering something with a serious face only to fall into a snore-filled slumber. Meanwhile, the secretive plotter was half leaning against her, also unconscious. It kind of felt weird seeing two of the oldest viewers in my channel sleeping so defenselessly like that. Han Suyong, checking me out through the rearview mirror, suddenly spoke up. "What are you grinning like that for? You should be getting ready to give us a proper explanation once we get back." Explanation, was it? It was pretty clear what I needed to explain to them, of course. You only have one chance. I found Yu Sang-ah's bright smile rather terrifying. We've arrived. Not too long after that, the Faragini came to a stop. We were back in Seoul. Asterisk. A short while later, I was sitting in front of my companions. The faces that I missed so much, the ones I wanted to see had gathered in one place. The Kim Dokja company that experienced the scenarios together with me, including Lee Gil-young, Shin Yu-sung, Jong Hui-won, and Lee Ji-hai. And Lee Seol-hwa and Gong Pil-do who guarded Seoul while I wasn't here. Finally, I could see my mother and the wanderers in the living room a bit further away. I studied the faces of all my companions and lowered my head 90 degrees before opening my mouth. I'm sorry. About what? All the things I've done. I'm really sorry. Well, sure. What's this? Weren't they furious at me? I wasn't sure what's going on here, but well, I thought this was for the best. I had so many things to explain, after all. I'd like to explain a few things, starting from, first of all, tell us whose child that is. Gong Pil-do threw out that question first. I chased after his gaze, and saw the secretive plotter floating inside a clear sphere near me. Currently, this individual's fable is unstable. Seeing that he still failed to regain his consciousness yet, it seemed that a serious problem had occurred after he used up far too much probability. Meaning, it was impossible for him to clarify the situation by himself. Meanwhile, rage began filling up Gong Pil-do's eyes when I didn't answer back. You said that you'd get rid of the scenario, so I protected Seoul for you, yet you dared to show yourself here with your child instead? The grief of a man who spent his entire life as a Jirioji dad could be felt in that voice. I see that you're under some sort of a misunderstanding, but whose is it? Gong Pil-do glanced at Yu Sang-ah with somewhat fearful eyes. Could it be? He met her smiling eyes and shook his head. Right, there's no way. That means, it's with her, then? You want to die? Han Suyong growled angrily, prompting him to flinch grandly. I didn't miss that opening and quickly jumped in. Excuse me, isn't it a bit too much thinking that he's someone's kid? Besides, just where does he look like a newborn to you? Han Myung-oa's kid grew up in the blink of an eye, didn't she? Those words caused Han Myung-oa's complexion to pale. That kind of makes me uncomfortable. What bugs me more than that is the kid's face. It's exactly the same as that jerk-off's. Gong Pil-do shifted his gaze over to the corner of the living room while saying that. That's where the cross-legged Yu Young-hyuk and his glaring eyes were at, his entire body tightly wrapped in bandages. His trademark scary glare was locked on me. Kim Dokja, what is the meaning of this? I could only sigh grandly. It's only natural that he looks exactly the same as that jerk-off. Because, this kid is that jerk-off, you see. Silence descended on the living room in an instant. Gong Pil-do was looking at me, his eyes asking what kind of rubbish I was spewing out this time. It seemed that my tale was going to get a bit lengthier than initially planned. There are several Yu Young-hyuks in this world. I guess I should start my explanation from there. Asterisk. I started my in-depth explanation from the end of the Great War of Saints and Demons. From when I summoned the outer god that destroyed the demon world, the nameless mist, to stop the apocalypse dragon. Gong Pildu, are you bloody insane? And then, encountering the secretive plotter and him kidnapping me. Isiolwa, oh my goodness. Then, finding out that the plotter was none other than Yu Yung Hyok, who had lived through 1863 regression turns. Jang Hyong. What the heck are you talking about? Forming a contract with him that also contained the Otherworld pledge. Shin Yu Sung. I knew something like that would happen, a juicy. Entering the great fable, Journey to the West, without informing my companions. E.g. hi, a juicy, you're definitely not cut out to be an actor, you know. The battle between two Yu Yung Hyoks, one from 1863rd turn and the other, from 999th turn. Zhang Hui won, just how many Yu Yung Hyoks are out there? Yu Yung Hyok of this world line, who thought that he was in the third turn, realizing that it's actually the 1864th, Han Mayang-o. Could it be that you yourself can't explain this and are just coming up with random stuff? Barely managing to clear the journey to the west with my companion's help, but then, getting kidnapped by the secretive plotter again. Yu Sang-ah, wordlessly sighing. And finally, the event of encountering the 999th turn's Uriel in that place, who had become an outer god herself. When I got that far, even I began wondering what the hell I was talking about. I raised my head to discover that my companions were carrying roughly the similar expressions. The first one to react was Han Mayang-o. So that's what happened. I think I understand everything. But that's plainly not possible? Everyone was now looking at him. So, Han Mayang-o added one more thing. It seems to me that you actually enjoy dying or getting kidnapped. Excuse me, I guess it's not just me who don't get it, right? Just what the heck are you talking about here? There are 3 of my masters running around out there? And what's up with this 1864th turn and all? Perhaps it was natural that they didn't understand. From the get-go, the fact that the 1863rd turn had split into 2 was causing the complications. Yu Yung Hyok, who lived through the original 1863rd turn, went on to become the secretive plotter. Meanwhile, Yu Yung Hyok that lived through the altered 1863rd turn regressed once more and became the dude that we all knew. Since I read The Ways of Survival, I could understand it fine, but it was natural that my companions would find this all rather mystifying. Zhang Huiwen, massaging her head, asked me then. Okay, so what are you saying? Is our Yung Hyok SSI the third turn, or the 1864th? That prompted Yu Yung Hyok, sitting on the corner of the bed, to reply curtly. I don't know. Eh? I can't remember. I activated the character list and confirmed Yu Yung Hyok's information. Plus. Character summarized list character, Yu Yung Hyok. Exclusive attribute, regressor third turn, myth. Plus. Surprisingly, his attribute had reverted back to third turn. My memories returned only during the time when I was borrowing Kim Dokja's fable for a little while. It was similar to watching someone else's history. I had no idea it was like that. Yu Yung Hyok continued on. This is what I think. This is originally the third turn, and I am definitely the third turn Yu Yung Hyok. Except that, during a certain point during the world line, the memories from when I was living in the 1864th turn have covered up mine temporarily. Isil Wa, listening in, joined the conversation. But, that doesn't make any sense. You're saying that the third turn has influenced the 1863rd turn, and in turn, the 1863rd has influenced the 3RD. That's logically impossible. Logically, no. Eventually, Han Suyang stepped in, too. It can only be valid in the form of written words. What I'm saying is that, such a thing is only possible because this world used to be a novel originally. She then shifted her gaze over to the secretive plotter, surrounded by the transparent sphere. It's the same thing as the square circle or the triangle, with the total of their interior angles coming at 720 degrees. Isiolwa tilted her head and asked her. But, something like that can't exist, right? It's more correct to say that you can't even imagine it, actually. However, as texts, as paragraphs, they certainly can exist. What's happening right now is just like that. To us, it might be a time paradox, but as text of a novel, it's completely possible, you know. I mean, you can just say, there it is, so deal with it. It's not the issue with understanding it, but rather, accepting it. So, let's look at it in a simpler way. We're currently stuck inside a crap novel. Since the original was crap, this is the end result. I wanted to say something as a rebuttal, but since she spoke of truth, I couldn't think of anything. If I was this novel's writer, I'd have stopped doing the world line distortion thing at once or twice. Readers seriously don't like this sort of complicated stories, you know? Even the constellations probably can't figure out what's going on here. Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, says that his incarnation is truly a smart cookie. A world with broken probability will collapse by itself. I know of quite a few stories that ended in that manner. Worlds that even their authors gave up on. Han Suyang was an author herself, so she could say these words. She might have abandoned such worlds in the past, and she might be regretting it till this day. When I thought about that, something felt off to me. The world created by the author of The Ways of Survival, TLS 123, had become a reality. In that case, what kind of a conclusion would you like to see, Dokjeonim? Which conclusion would be a happy ending for the protagonist? Could it be that the author couldn't finish his story and was leaving it up to us? Zhang Huiwen scratched her cheek and asked. Okay, so what's your conclusion, Han Suyang? We gotta fight those bastards that shoved us into this stupid world. Whether it's the author, the outer gods, or even the Dakibis. The same as it has always been, then. Doesn't matter what happened in the original, you can chuck that crap to the dogs, for all I care. We have to see our own conclusion, anyway. We simply can't remain stuck in the damn shithole scenarios forever. She was right. Right about everything. Whether it was the Outer God King or the Bureau, it didn't matter. Every star and nebula, Kim Dokja Company, is radiating light. No matter who our enemy was, we still had only one choice to make. We fight, win, and reach our answers in our own way. Dokja SSI? Before I realized it, my companions were looking at me. They seemed to be waiting for me to say something. Their expressions were asking me about what we need to do moving on, and what we need to make preparations for. Of course, I had been thinking about those, as well. However, it wasn't that easy for me to say the first words. Maybe it was because I felt nervous, knowing that the end was around the corner. It was fear that, although we reached this far with so much hardship, one wrong judgment from me and everything could go down the crapper, just like that. It was also a burden of knowing that I now had to walk on the path not seen in the original novel. My lips bobbed up and down several times, and eventually, I managed to eke out a word. So. That'll be enough for today. Yu Seng'a stepped in to stop me. Let us rest for today, and carry on tomorrow. Everyone, we've returned from a tough scenario only just now, anyway. Asterisk. I stayed up that night and made plans. I was almost lured by the temptation to read the final revised version of The Ways of Survival several times, but in the end, I didn't. I wasn't sure why not, but then again I did have this hunch. This gut feeling that, the moment I read the novel, I'd not be able to escape from its shackles. I fell into a slumber so deep that I couldn't even remember when I succumbed to it. The last bits of the memories were a blur. I might have dozed off while reading a book, and I thought I drank a cup of warm tea that Igilyong had brought in. In any case, it was a rather sweet sleep. And, I thought I had a happy dream, too. The dream was about the chat I had with Yu Seng'a some time ago. Set in a world where all the scenarios had come to an end, my companions were busy talking about their daily lives. It was really peaceful. It was so peaceful, in fact, that it didn't feel like real peace to me. And when I saw the bright smiles on Shin Yusung and Lee Gil-young's faces, somewhat mysteriously I realized the truth. This is a dream, isn't it? I bit down hard on my lip, and as if an earthquake had erupted out, the view of my dream rocked about. Still in the haziness of my consciousness, I slowly opened my eyes and tried to sit up. What's this? My body didn't want to move. Also, the faint earthquake I felt inside the dream continued on, too. I managed to force my eyes open, and the surroundings revealed itself under the dim darkness. What greeted me was the sensation of plush leather enveloping my back and the head. Hey, Kim Dokja's trying to wake up. Put him to sleep again. I felt someone smacking me in the head, and my consciousness dimmed again. And as I faded out, I heard a mischievous voice talking to me. This is the workers' revolt, you dumbass. And when I opened my eyes again, I was inside an unfamiliar mountainside. Chapter 455. The Square Circle. Part 2. I began thinking about how this event came to be. 1. I was bound tightly. 2. I was thrown inside an unfamiliar mountainside. No matter how hard I analyzed it, the end result always came back to kidnapping. But who would dare to infiltrate the Kim Dokja company and kidnap me? Which could only mean is Dokja. Untie. Ought? Faint voices could be heard coming from somewhere. I grunted and struggled to free myself, and then staggered towards where those voices were coming from. I brushed past the thickets and around 30 seconds later, ran into a fairly wide campsite manned by my companions. Ah, so he came on his own volition, then. Han Suyang snickered and waved her hand towards me. What are you looking at? Haven't you seen an industrial strike action before? Hang on a minute, this. What a nice breeze. Dokja SSI, why don't you come and lie down here? Zhang Huiwen was lying spread-eagled on the ground looking up at the sky right next to Han Suyang. She moved her arms as if they were her wings, causing the fragrant green blades of grass to fall and get back up again and again. Han Suyang then began muttering in a reverential voice. Grass lies down. Faster than wind, it lies down. Oh. Zhang Huiwen too lies down. Faster than wind she lies down, and before the gust comes she stands up first. Not bad? While looking at this sudden breakout of a poetry reading competition, as well as Zhang Huiwen providing timely support fire, I asked them in a dazed voice. Just what is going on? This is the workers' revolution, dumbass. Okay, you've been harping on about a revolution and whatnot for a while now, but, arg, I just want to take a damn break. Do I need to spell it out for you? I frowned after she berated me. Taking a break? What are you talking about? Don't you know what era we're in right now? What era are we in, then? I wasn't sure what to say when she retorted back like that. What did she mean by what era we were in? Currently, the Nebula Kim Dokja Company possesses the qualification to enter the final scenario. Remaining time to enter the scenario is 28 days, 12 hours, 15 minutes, and 7 seconds. I calmly replied to ensure that I wouldn't get sucked into her pace. We don't have the time for this. The final scenario is literally just around the corner. And that's why we need to take a breather now. If not, when can we be able to, like this, said Han Suyang, while sighing out grandly. Look around you. Don't spend your day buried in your smartphone, alright? You still want to work even after coming to a place like this? After hearing her, I began scanning the surrounding terrain for the first time. Indeed, we were in a fertile, green forest. I wasn't sure which mountain it was, Yuri-san, Siaraksan, or Halasan. In any case, it was a really beautiful mountain, alright. The sunlight wasn't too strong, while the wind blowing felt cool to the skin. It was perfect weather for camping, in other words. I hesitated somewhat before speaking up. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take a break, but... it's good to rest, but what I'm saying is that we should finish what we need to do first. Right now, we're... Holy cow. Dokja SSI, you're really Kondi-minded, aren't you? Is every company representative out there like you? Said Zhang Huiwen, while lightly tapping my shin. Representative Nim? When you're taking a break, you're supposed to just do it. My head became complicated. Han Suyang glared at me when I didn't say a thing and addressed me in a sour tone of voice. Sure, you're oh so right. Everyone shouldn't be resting at the same time, so at least one person should be in a scenario. Why don't you go ahead? What? I'm saying, why don't you do the scenario that you love so much? After hearing her, my gaze abruptly shifted up to the air to discover an actual scenario window floating up there. Sub-scenario, workers' off day has been generated. I had never even heard of such a scenario before, so I quickly accessed the scenario window. Plus. Sub-scenario, workers' off day, type, sub. Difficulty? Clear condition, you're the head representative of the Nebula, Kim Dokja Company. Due to your exploitation and harsh treatment, employees of Kim Dokja Company are currently in a very fatigued state. They are greatly dissatisfied with you, the head of the Nebula, and are in the middle of a strike. As their boss, you must listen to their complaints and appease them. In consideration of your weak communication skill, the total goal for complaint resolution will be set at 5 people. Time limit, 12 hours. Reward, trust from Kim Dokja Company's employees failure, death? Plus. Death? What the hell, what kind of a scenario is this? I looked up at the sky, and Bu went bot up there. Han Suyang grumbled directly aimed at me. Seriously, man. This guy needs to be told through a scenario just to understand it. Asterisk. While feeling anxious, I looked around my surroundings. My companions seemed to be enjoying themselves. Han Suyang was busy reciting parody poems, while Zhang Huiwen had fallen asleep among the grass. Yi Gilyang and Shin Yusung were butting heads and growling at each other. Hey, Shin Yusung. Let's make a bet. Let's see who can catch the bigger dinner today. What are we betting on? The loser grants the winner one wish, okay? Call. The kids quickly sprinted towards the forest and Yuseng called out to them. Be careful. There was a small valley with a flowing stream next to the campsite. Gong Pildu sat on the fishing chair he brought along, and while looking at his lure in the water, he yawned out relaxedly. Han Myongo sitting next to him was muttering about this and that. If only we were out by the ocean, I'd have caught a sea bream this big. I heard the refreshing sounds of water flowing in the valley as well as mountain birds chirping away. It felt as if the calming greenery of the overgrown mountainside was slowly collapsing on myself. It was as if I was still dreaming. This sort of affectionate behavior felt uncomfortable to me, like some kind of ill-fitting clothes. Was it okay to be like this? Was it okay to experience moments like this already? I searched for you, Young Hyok. Indeed, we shouldn't be like this. If it was him, he should agree with me. He must be standing around somewhere while glaring at the group. Along with that scary light in his eyes, he'd start lecturing everyone, beginning with "you fools." I quickly located him. I was about to raise my hand and call out to him, but then, stopped after realizing something was off there, too. Cheek. He was actually cooking over there. Standing before a large grill, his hands were moving around in a showy fashion to grill some meat. Vegetables were sizzling and shuddering inside the frying pan. The breaking the sky swordsmanship, capable of destroying the heavens, was now used to chop vegetables and meat. I even forgot to call out to him and stared at that spectacle in a pure daze. Just what in freaking hell was going on here? In the next second, his eyes shifted over in my direction. He then silently conveyed his words with that trademark scary glare of his. I didn't need to resort to the omniscient reader's viewpoint to tell what those eyes were saying. It was most definitely. You can look all day long, but you aren't getting any of this food. That's what those eyes probably meant to say. His sides were occupied by both Yu Mia and E.G. Hai, their eyes filled with deep interest and anticipation. Now. Yu Mia opened her mouth, and Yu Young Hyok moved his chopsticks with an emotionless face. He was like a mother bird, picking up a piece of meat to place it in her mouth. She grinned brightly. It's really tasty. Hai, blankly standing around, opened her mouth, too. He studied her for a moment or two, before placing more meat inside Mia's mouth, instead. That carried on for 4, maybe 5 more times, and eventually, Hai shut her mouth. Master, you're too heartless. Unable to endure it any longer, she personally moved her chopsticks. However, his frying pan shifted according to the eye-catching trajectory of the red phoenix shuimpa to avoid her hands. She grew tearful first, before getting rather stubborn about it. Oh, so you want to have a go, is that it? I seriously couldn't tell whether I was inside the world of the ways of survival, or the ice-cold handsome regressor Yu Yoonghyeok shouldn't be doing this world. He continued evading Hai's chopsticks and fed his little sister Yu Mia without twitching his eyebrows once, remaining utterly expressionless. However, there was something I could glean from that. And I came to a realization: he was genuinely serious about being here. Even though we are in this sort of time frame, why did Yu Yoonghyeok let this event happen? I wasn't the only head representative of Kim Dokja Company. In more ways than one, Yu Yoonghyeok was a far more obstinate person than I was, and also, boasted far greater experience in running a group such as this one. Yet, such a person had willingly participated in this camping trip. Youricantl, Kim Dokja. Accompanying the fourth wall's voice, several paragraphs unfolded themselves before my eyes. Author Nim, how about going to a beach during this regression turn? That was a comment I posted a long time ago. Even though I remembered so much about the ways of survival, I had forgotten all about the comments I posted. Now that I thought about it, there was one event that Yu Yoonghyeok never missed during his countless repeated regressions. Today, we take a break. That would be taking an off day. It happened during the original ways of survival, but hadn't happened so far in this world. Every time they were about to encounter another important hurdle, he'd take his companions to a different planet's tourist attractions. Of course, he had the pretext of finding necessary items for the upcoming scenarios, but he didn't force his group to do the same things as him. Master, come join us and have some fun. Hey, Hai. Kakik. Take a gander at my abs, will ya? Even my black flame dragon praised them. We're going to eat Yoonghyeok SSI's cooking today, right? Even Yu Yoonghyeok was like that, yet what was I like? We must get ready for the next scenario. We were always in a hurry, as if we were being pursued. We never had any leeway. And as we got to the latter half of the scenarios, such tendency grew even stronger. Our goal was always right in front of our eyes. I acted as if the scenario themselves would break down if we didn't solve whatever it was in time. But now that I began thinking deeply about it, the scenarios would have been just fine even if we didn't hurry up and do something about them. Hey, Gilyong. We agreed not to use any skills here, didn't we? When did I? You gotta give it your best always. I heard the kids' voices as they were returning with hunted prey. Soon after that, I heard Han Suyong's loud call that reverberated throughout the valley. Alright, then. The treasure hunt event will now begin. The prize is a star relic from the Black Flame Dragon. What, really? From that Black Flame Dragon? I've hidden it somewhere in the valley, so the first one to find it is the winner. Ah, right. You're forbidden from using your skills. Got that? Besides that, there are other prizes too, so. That star relic is mine. Han Myongo quickly discarded his fishing rod and jumped inside the stream, but a little while later, Zhang Huiwen grabbed hold of his head and threw him out of the water. In no time at all, Hai and the kids returning from their hunting trip all jumped into the valley's water, too. Yo, hold up, Jihai Nuna. That's Ghost Fleet. You think I won't notice it just because they are tiny now? Gilyong. Are you seriously taming water bugs? You cheater. Both of you, disqualified. How long had it been since all of my companions were smiling together like this? Maybe, this could be our first time. They were able to smile even though the scenarios hadn't ended yet. They were able to chat away in happiness like that, and share their stories. And while looking at that spectacle, Kim Dokja suddenly felt lonely for some reason. Could it be that I had failed to understand a single thing about the ways of survival? No, wait, regarding my companions, instead? Maybe, because I was drunk in the fantasy of witnessing the conclusion, I actually ended up missing all the countless words that had to be read in order to reach the true conclusion? You have currently resolved 0 complaints. A scenario that previously felt like nothing important suddenly felt as imposing and difficult as a great fable now. I plopped down below a parasol and dazedly looked on. Someone lightly tapped me on the shoulder. "How goes it with your scenario?" Yu Sang-ah grinned refreshingly. I replied with a powerless grin of my own, and she addressed me again. "Well, Dokja SSI, your communication skill has always been a little lacking, so it can't be helped, I guess. You were also like that back when we were working for the company." "I was?" "You really didn't speak all that much to other people." I became utterly speechless after she mercilessly carpet-bombed me with facts. But then again, after giving it a bit of thought, it made total sense. I grew up without a friend from a young age. I wasn't clued in on how to socialize with other people, and back then, I only thought about how to weasel myself out of the company meal get-together. I figured that, rather than wasting time doing that, I might as well read The Ways of Survival one more time instead. Kim Dokja Youhave a Friday and no W. And then, here was an inorganic substance that tried to round me up by saying that it was my friend. Yu Sang-ah settled down beneath the parasol too, and observed our companions with a relaxed gaze. Perhaps she was going for the camping look herself, because rather than the usual Buddhist robe, she was now wearing a casual one-piece with a wide-brimmed straw hat. She sure knew how to match the atmosphere regardless of where she was. She was someone too good to be kept in the Kim Dokja company run by a pretty useless leader, at the very least. Sang-ah SSI, do you by any chance regret getting in the subway that day? I wasn't sure why I asked her that. Even now, the events of the very first scenario remained vivid in my mind. If only Yu Sang-ah's bicycle didn't get stolen. If she got her start from somewhere else, then she might not have become Olympus' incarnation. Maybe she wouldn't have to die either. She wouldn't have to experience the pain of reincarnation, too. No, I don't. I had never seen such a determined expression on her face before. So, Dokja SSI. You mustn't regret anything, either. Pardon? Regarding what? I mean, everything. I wasn't sure what to say to her. It felt as if I'd only sound like an ass just by thanking her or expressing my gratitude. The Ways of Survival never taught me what I should say in moments like this. As if she could read my mind, she grinned refreshingly and pointed to someone over yonder. I think it'll be for the best that you speak to that person first. Chapter 456. The Square Circle. Part 3. My concerns? Yes. If you're unhappy about your work, or... The first person I went to speak to was Isiolwa. She was wearing an outdoor scientist garb, and with a small magnifying glass, studied every nook and cranny of my face as if I was some sort of an unidentified herb. She then replied to my question. Well, I don't particularly have one. She might be saying that, but there was no way that she didn't have any complaints. As the head representative of the company, I can only apologize to you. I'm aware that you have worked hard to protect Seoul during our absence. It must have been very difficult too. Do you really think so? And not like, staying back in Seoul must have been so much easier? Her voice sounded sharp, prompting my lips to close shut before I realized it. I knew it. That's what you were really thinking of. You were just being sarcastic, yes? No, never. I wouldn't. I know that others had been entering dangerous scenarios. Even if that was the case, remaining in Seoul wasn't all plain sailing, you know. Isiolwa lowered her gaze and began searching for something within the bushes once more. It should be around here somewhere. Isiolwa has never taken a day off. Her fable began speaking up for her, instead. After the group departed from the industrial complex, she operated its sickbay and looked after the patients. Every day, the injured suffering from similar types of wounds would rush in. She watched them die, and while looking at their passing, she thought about her companions. I won't be much help in the latter half of the scenarios. I'm well aware of my own potential, and my constellation is also only a historical figure grade as well. But, I still do my best every day. For sure, the intensity of status floating about her vicinity felt quite different from before. It wasn't as if her combat abilities had improved, but well, how should I put this? It was like her pool of knowledge and the skills had gotten even more profound. Whoever it is in the Kim Dokja company, I can save that person as long as he or she still breathes. I can ensure that no one will die. It was true that Isiolwa's current growth rate was unmatched in any of the regression turns from the original novel. If my guess was correct, then she should soon reach the pinnacle of life and death miraculous doctor. Without a doubt, she was a necessary person to achieve my dream ending. What kind of a person was I in the novel you read, Dokja SSI? I got flustered for a moment there by the unexpected question. You were an important person. Okay, by how much? Isiolwa was one of the heroines to appear in the Ways of Survival. However, I couldn't come out and say that she was Yu Yoonhyuk's lover from the past. From the get-go, I thought that he wouldn't want that to be known. And most importantly, I wasn't sure if that would be an appropriate description for the person called Isiolwa. Who was she, really? Well, that. Just before I could carry on, Isiolwa's expression brightened and she shouted out. Ot! Found it! Her hand was holding a small flower. That must be the herb she was searching for. I immediately recognized what that was. White ghostly flame flower. The final ingredient for the life and death pill. At a casual glance, it looked like an ordinary wildflower. Eating this herb alone had no effect whatsoever. However, the miraculous elixir that was the life and death pill could never be concocted without this herb. She began smiling like a little kid. This sense of life that couldn't be felt from the pages of the Ways of Survival was emanating vividly right before my eyes. This is Isiolwa. That's why I gave up on recalling the words from the novel altogether. And then, I said some lame things instead. You're the best doctor that I know of. Praise cooked up by a small kid might be better sounding than that. Even so, Isiolwa grinned back at me. Thank you. Even if you didn't mean it. I did mean it, though. Please wait for me. I will turn those empty words into reality soon. I watched her leave in search of another herb, and came to a realization. What she was curious about earlier wasn't the Ways of Survival. Unlike me, she didn't need such a novel in the first place. You have currently resolved 0 complaints. I hadn't made any headway into the scenario, but I didn't feel so bad. It's not that easy, right? I looked behind and found you saying once more. Yes, it's not easy. But, that's only natural. If you could finish up all the conversations you had been putting off as if it's some kind of an event, then that's something out of a novel, not reality. I guess so. Even then, you must carry on. I nodded my head. Who do you think I should speak to next? It had been better if you did it yourself, but I'll help you again this one last time. She used her hand to shield her eyes and scanned our companions. It was then, a message entered my ear. Currently, Kim Dokja Company's contracted workers are feeling dissatisfied. Contracted workers? Did our nebula have people like that? Yu Sang-ah then pointed to a spot. Why don't you head over there this time? The moment I looked there, I realized who the contracted workers were. Asterisk. A short while later, I was addressing 3 people standing before me. I have something to discuss with you. What is it? I'm really busy, so hurry up. I must go and find that black flame dragon star relic, right now. Han Myongo raised his voice as if to urge me along. Gong Pildu and his disinterested face, and the pouting Jang Haiyang were standing next to him. I could easily tell that they weren't exactly happy about being summoned here like this. Even though they had experienced scenarios together with us, they hadn't joined the Kim Dokja company properly yet. Everyone, there's something you should know first. I decided to tell them something that they didn't know, a piece of information that Kim Dokja company's companions already knew, the ways of survival. It was a big decision on my part to tell them about it, but rather contrary to my initial expectation, Gong Pildu's reaction was lukewarm at best. There was a time when I used to believe everything in the land price pamphlets. I guess you're still too naive. Pardon? Young people these days. It seemed that Gong Pildu didn't really get what I was saying. On the other hand, Han Myongo seemed to be under a great mental shock. So you knew everything, yet you just left me to end up in that wretched state? Jang Haiyang also seemed to be surprised, albeit for different reasons. So, that's how it was. That's why you knew so much back in the demon world. Thankfully, their reactions weren't as bad as I thought. But then again, they had already met a regressor and plenty of reincarnators, so maybe, my story didn't sound so crazy to them by now. I breathed a sigh of relief inwardly and continued on. There's only one reason why I told you this information. I'd like to formally hire you into the Kim Dokja company. My words caused the three to exchange glances with each other. The first one to speak was Gong Pildu, on whose authority Incarnation Gong Pildu has joined Kim Dokja company. Could it be that the term being koi was invented for this ajusi? Next up was Han Myongo. Are you going to retain my previous position as a department head? Well, we don't have any ranks like that, but if you want, I can create one for you. Please make sure that you pay your wages on time. As for paternity leave and overtime, Incarnation Han Myongo has joined Kim Dokja company. Finally, I shifted my gaze over to Jang Haiyang. Incarnation Jang Haiyang has joined Kim Dokja company. Okay, so, Flame Dragon, something happened just now, and it's... She was using her wall to send out messages of her employment to pretty much everywhere. Congratulatory messages from her friends in the star stream continued to flood in. While looking at her being genuinely happy, I grew a lot more complicated in my head. If I knew she'd be this happy, then I should have let her join us earlier. By the way, Kim Dokja, why are you suddenly letting me join you? She waited for my answer with sparkling eyes. I had several reasons why I didn't let Jang Haiyang join the Kim Dokja company. But at least for today, I didn't want to think about them. I definitely needed her. However, I didn't bring her into the nebula simply because her presence was a must during the conclusion. I wanted to witness the end of the scenario with you. Jang Haiyang's eyes grew wider after she heard me. I felt uncomfortable while watching her pale cheeks tremble like that. As expected of someone possessing looks that easily slapped Young Hyok's cheeks at least 2 times in a row. She blinked her large, clear eyes and energetically nodded her head. I'll really work hard. She clenched her fists tightly and began typing away once more. Congratulations! You have resolved the complaint of the contracted worker. You have currently resolved one complaint. I finally succeeded with one. So, being the head representative was this tough, huh? Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is asking you if the rumor is true. What rumor? Constellation, Abyssal Black Flame Dragon, is asking you if you really confessed to Jang Haiyang. Constellation, Most Ancient Liberator, is asking the Magne Sun Wukong. Just what kind of a rumor was spreading around here? I had no idea what she was so busily typing away there, but regardless, I could see Jang Haiyang diligently tapping on the imaginary keyboard in the air. Hey, you! Come and eat supper. Han Suyang's loud shout came from afar. The delicious aroma wafting in from somewhere attracted the companions, and we gathered around one by one. Then, Han Suyang stared at Young Hyok as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. Well, then. Shall we taste your high and mighty cooking skill in action, then? And why should I share my cooking with you? He glared at the rest of the group with a menacing glare, before turning around to leave while throwing these following words behind. There are leftovers that side, so why don't you eat that? We looked over in the direction he was pointing at. And straight away, we became utterly speechless. They were now witnessing the essence of cooking. We all settled down quietly on the table like a bunch of mice that got entranced by the Pied Piper, and then began rubbing our eyes in disbelief. These were dishes created out of the monster that Lee Gil-young and Shin Yu-sung caught, as well as with the medicinal herbs Seolwa had found. No, hang on. How could he even come up with a feast of this scale with only those ingredients? I was pretty certain that the dining table of Shi Huangdi who dreamed of immortality wouldn't be as flashy as this one. Wow. Master, you gotta come and cook during my funeral, okay? Why your funeral, though? That's really an ominous declaration, you know. The group began hurriedly chowing down the grub. Zhang Huiwen, E.G. Hai, Han Myong-o, Gong Pildu, even Zhang Haiyang. They were all seriously focused on eating right now. Even Han Suyang and Yu Sang-ah, too. Hey, hold up. That's my share. There's enough to go around for everyone. Why are you being so greedy? Some even began fighting over the food, too. Juicy, please try this one. Hyung, this one, too. Lee Gil-young and Shin Yu-sung sat on either side of me and shoved spoonfuls of food into my mouth without a moment's rest. My cheeks swelled up like a hamster as I chewed the rice, and of course, I didn't forget to feed the kids side dishes in the meantime. It was tasty. Seriously tasty. So tasty, in fact, I was almost thankful that the ways of survival had become reality for a moment there. Shin Yu-sung's eyes rolled around as she chewed the meat, then she whispered in a small voice. It's like we're on a school trip. When I heard her, I immediately wanted to kick myself to death for feeling thankful that the ways of survival had become reality. The school field trip, one of the things children had lost in this world. I placed my hands on the heads of the kids and spoke to them. You're right. It's like a field trip. Although, the one learning from this trip wasn't the kids, but me. Juicy, what would you like to do after the scenarios are over? Hyung will live with me. I wasn't asking you what I want to do after the scenarios were over. Normally, I'd have smiled and glossed over the topic, but for some reason, I ended up uttering out something without realizing it. I want to buy a really big house and live together with everyone. When I raised my head, I noticed that the once noisy surroundings had fallen into an eerily silence. E.g. Hai, Zhang Huiwen, Gong Pildu, even Han Suyang was looking at me, her mouth agape. Zhang Huiwen was the first to fire the salvo. In that case, Dokja SSI, you'll be paying for the house, yes? Ing? Juicy, you're really loaded, so you might be able to get a house in Gangnam. I'll sell you my land. If it's possible, somewhere close to the kids' school. I had no idea that something I just threw out there would cause such a ripple. And so, the group chatted about the potential house I'd buy throughout the supper. Stuff about how the interior should look like, or how many rooms it needed to have. Washing the dishes was left to me and Zhang Huiwen, the two losers from the rock paper scissors. I could have won by using Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, but of course I wouldn't do that during this trip. You have acquired a new fable. You have acquired the fable, the one who yanked out the conscience's fur. Also, it was nice to get a new fable, too. As I was cleaning the dishes, I spotted something falling in the distant skies above. It was a shooting star. Falling stars that left behind lengthy trails. Most likely, those were planets that were falling for real. The star stream was marching towards its own oblivion. Zhang Huiwen, looking up at the sky next to me, spoke up. It's like back then in the cinema dungeon. I nodded my head. For sure, it was kind of similar to that day. We were also together like this on the rooftop of the dungeon. We were looking at the falling stars and making our wishes. SSI, you asked me to become your sword back then. Indeed, I asked her to become my comrade in that place. And after that, she had become the greatest ally anyone could ask for. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to arrive at this moment in time. But, someone else became the literal sword instead of me. Those words made me shift my gaze over to the steel sword, laying quietly on the ground. Even as everyone was taking their much-deserved break, the sole person to miss out on the festivities was right there. Lee Hyun-sung, with his heart not beating. He seemed to regain his consciousness sporadically, but he remained as a sword and didn't want to move. Please do not worry. Before we head off to the next scenario, I'll definitely wake up Hyun-sung SSI. You know of a way? I nodded my head. Lee Hyun-sung's issue wasn't the only one we need to deal with, though. We now required much greater power. Because our goal didn't simply stop at clearing the scenarios, that's why. To fight the Bureau, as well as the entirety of the star stream, I needed to start gathering constellations that would stand with us. Constellation, Master of Steel, is looking at you. And Lee Hyun-sung's constellation backer would be the first to join us. Jang Hui-won spoke up as if my confident expression left an impression on her. By the way, Dokjo SSI? Yes? Will it be fine for you to stand around here trying to look cool? I mean, aren't you in the middle of a scenario? You really aren't a being kidnapped and dying enthusiast, are you? Along with her words, the scenario window popped up before my eyes. The day is coming to a close. You have currently resolved one complaint. I reconfirmed the failure penalty of the sub-scenario once more. Plus. Failure, death? Plus. I looked up at the shooting star in the sky. Maybe, this might very well be my final scenario.